A red-haired 19-year-old boy named Lin Yang was carrying his bag of belongings towards the legendary Daiichi Shinsei Medical University. It was very stylish and couldn't compare to the school in his small town. Lin Yang grew up on an ordinary farm and became the only student in the family. Looking around, the guy saw that the main advantage of the university, these are beautiful girls, and also handsome guys. The young man is firmly convinced that all the handsome men of the university will be his. It's good that he put the seducer's ring on his finger, which he bought for 8 yuan. It will definitely be worth the cost. It makes him look stylish and attractive. Suddenly, someone tapped the guy on the shoulder. He turned around and saw a girl with pink hair in front of him, Lin Liu, who said she was from the music department. The young man also introduced himself to her and thought how beautiful she was. The ring that was on his finger turned out to actually work, and he still doubted his purchase. Now all the girls will literally gather around him. The girl, meanwhile, winked at him and said that there would be a university party the other day, so he could go. There will be a lot of cool people there. Lin Yang replied that he would be happy to come, but decided to clarify the meeting place. Lin Liu told him that everyone was going to Building A and ran on about her business. What a cutie she was. It wouldn't be bad if she were his girlfriend. However, the next moment a huge shadow grew behind the guy. When Lin Yang turned around, he saw a tall, muscular guy with white hair behind him, who, in a voice impatient of objections, invited him to leave. The thug grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and dragged him into the garden, where his friends were just as huge. The same blonde asked if he had misunderstood anything. Lin Yang awkwardly touched his hair and said that the girl was just his classmate, and they chatted for a while. The next moment, the red-haired man received a powerful blow to the jaw, and he himself then fell into the bushes. Then the blonde threatened him that if he saw him with her even one more time, he would feel very bad. However, Lin Yang did not tolerate such treatment and retaliated by punching the blonde in the jaw. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, he told his guys to finish with this guy, and the whole crowd of healthy men rushed at the guy. They started kicking him until someone ordered them to stop immediately. Seeing that some old man had seen them, the blonde told his guys to leave. A man in a suit ran up to Lin Yang and asked how he was and if he was okay. Does he really know these scum? Lin Yang, covered in bruises, replied that naturally he didn't know who these guys were, and he thanked the teacher for dispersing them. The man with glasses suggested that he saw those guys in the gym, and tomorrow he will definitely talk to them, because what they did is simply unacceptable. The man wrote something on a piece of paper and handed it to the guy so that he could take it to the university, and they would give him money for treatment. The young man thanked him and promised to take revenge on them all. Lin Yang's whole body ached, and it seemed like he was bleeding internally. Seeing his nose bleeding, the guy realized that he urgently needed to go to the hospital. The ring on his finger suddenly glowed and something very strange was happening. In an instant, all the guy's wounds and abrasions disappeared. His face became completely healthy and nothing hurt anymore. My nose even stopped bleeding. 2 hours earlier, Lin Yang was walking down the street of his village with a backpack on his back when a man called out to him. The guy approached him and asked what he needed. And then I saw a tray with a bunch of decorations. The man in the funny hat looked at the young man and noticed that there was something strange in his eyes. He has a very bright future. The guy answered with a smile that he knew that. And then he asked, doesn't the man know who he is? He is the only student in their small village. Therefore, all the residents told him that he was different from others. The man snorted. The guy talked like he was special, but it also has its drawbacks. For example, he is such a freak. This phrase stabbed the guy right in the heart. However, the man said that he had a ring that would suit him, and handed him a ring with a pink stone. If he puts this ring on his finger, he will immediately become beautiful. And since fate brought them together today, the man sells him this ring for 998 yuan. The young man lazily said that this was a broken ring and he wanted to sell it for 998 yuan. Who is he trying to fool? Therefore, he will give only 3 and no more. The man realized that the guy was not so simple, and said 88. Lin Yang said 5, male 48. In the end, they agreed on 8 yuan and the guy was delighted to notice that he folded the ring and it suited him very well. The man himself was glad that he sold this ring for at least some money, because he himself found it in the trash. A little later, the young man sat on the ground floor of a bunk bed and scratched the ring as an experiment. He didn't understand how it could be restored right away. What was wrong with this ring? Suddenly he thought with shock, this couldn't be a ring from some old man's grave. Half an hour later the guy didn't know what to do with himself. He was so tired, he didn't know what to do. He can't take off this ring and that's it. Maybe it's actually cursed. Suddenly the ring began to spew gas. Because of him, the guy became very hot and he simply fell into bed. After some time, the guy found himself in a strange, smoky place. It was like some very strange dream. And suddenly he saw a girl there, which threw him back. Is this really what is called wet sleep? Lin Yan's heart began to beat wildly at the sight of such a beautiful girl. He swallowed hard, realizing that this was all just a dream. This means that he can touch her. The girl exhaled and the guy grabbed his chest, not understanding what was happening to him. Why did one of her size make him cringe? Looking at pink-haired, the guy realized that she looked quite familiar, but he could not understand and remember where he saw her. Suddenly the girl hugged him and called him her little man. Finally he came to her. Lin Yang felt that she buried his face in her chest, and at that moment the guy woke up from a loud knock on the door. And why did the revolver close? Someone outside just opened the door for him immediately, and the guy was upset that his wonderful sleep was interrupted. This was just the beginning. He demands the continuation of this dream. Lin Yang got out of bed and opened the door. He saw 3 guys in front of him who understood he was in no hurry to open the store. And what was he doing here all alone? The young man with glasses, who was the furthest away from the table, smiled sarcastically and asked if he really had too much energy. And why isn't his bed made at all? Did he just ruin millions of lives? Lin Yang realized that he was exactly in trouble. The guy with purple hair started making fun of him and thought about finding his friend a girlfriend. Lin Yang returned to bed again and said that he was too lazy to talk to all of them. All night, when she was sleeping, the ring seemed to live its own life. It sparkled, and its body was as if made of red threads. A few hours later it was morning. It was already light outside the window, and next to the guy's head his alarm clock was ringing, humming a sweet song. Lin Yang sat down on the bed and stretched sleepily, getting used to the daylight. But surprisingly, he slept very well and was now full of energy. When the young man went to brush his teeth, he suddenly noticed that he had become incredibly handsome in just one night. Then he noticed that his shirt was getting smaller, or was it just him growing up? Instead, it was very strange. After some time, Lin Yang found himself in the park, and hiding in the bushes, he decided to check if it was all an illusion. He simply lifted a huge stone, despite the fact that this block weighs about half a ton, and he picked it up like an ordinary candy wrapper. Lin Yang then threw a cobblestone into the water, and it was as if there was an explosion. Passing across the bridge, the guy guessed what was happening to him, but he had no evidence. But now he looked so cool. Turning back, Lin Yang saw a group of guys who beat him yesterday. They were surprised that this little guy turned out to be such a strong guy. Surprisingly, he can even walk after yesterday. Yesterday they were interrupted, but today the blonde is going to give him a hard time. Lin Yang was not at all scared by this. He was ready to correct yesterday's misunderstanding. And if the blonde has even a drop of courage, he will not have time to escape. One of the guys ironically noticed that the red-haired guy had grown something overnight. They were ready to hit him hard. When everyone attacked him, Lin Yang easily scattered everyone in different directions, as if it cost him nothing. No one expected such surprises from this guy. He practically fought with a whole crowd of guys with one hand. After some time, all the bandits were scattered across the grass. Only the blonde man remained. Lin Yang reminded him not to dare to run away, just as he had said from the beginning. He tried to attack first, he only got it in the nose, and now he was bleeding. Looking at his opponent's badge, Lin Yang saw that in front of him was Lin Dahai, a person who was studying in the sports department for the second year, 6th grade. Lin Yang warned him not to dare cross his path, because next time he would definitely give him a good whack. A little later, the young man walked down the street, still wondering if this was all true. Has he really become much stronger? Suddenly he noticed a very strange aura around the girls that were not far away. Maybe he got something in his eye. But after blinking a little, he noticed that nothing had changed. One of his friends, a guy with purple hair, who was walking next to him and buried his face in his phone, asked what he was doing. Their work is about to begin. Lin Yang replied that he didn't do anything like that and suggested going to class together. When the friend walked away, he noticed that there was no such aura with the guys. Therefore, he realized that this was something very strange. What was going on here? The girls whispered behind his back, noticing his strange behavior. One blonde thought that he had fallen in love with her because he had been fussing over her for too long. But her friend wished her to only dream about it, because the guy looks at every girl like that. Maybe he's some kind of pervert. One girl was embarrassed that he just looked at her. Her cheeks turned pink. Maybe fate itself brought them together. The friend was surprised that Lin Yang was staring at one girl so intently. Maybe he's just overexcited from last night. Already sitting in the office at the lecture, the guy did not understand what this strange aura was all about. All the girls. The guys from the back desk began to discuss him, that he was a real pervert, because he stared at every girl in their class. Apparently he can't let off steam. The guy with glasses was simply afraid that Lin Yang might do something unusual. The door to the classroom creaked and an overweight woman entered, who, apparently, would be giving the lecture. Lin realized that this aura existed even around the teacher, but it was still much weaker than the girl's. The woman noticed his gaze on her, became embarrassed and asked why he was looking at her so intently. Does she really have something on her face? The guys were simply amazed that his teacher also turned him on. The guys called out to Lin Yang and said that they wanted to chip in for a girl, and he shouldn't come up with anything else. The guy made the most discouraged and dissatisfied face and asked why they were watching him. The lesson has already started a long time ago, so they better get away from it as soon as possible. Lin Yang began flipping through the textbook at the speed of light, and then loudly slammed the book shut in the realization that it had suddenly become very easy for him to study. He memorized literally every formula that he saw just once, and this frightened the young man a little. He even jumped out of his seat out of indignation, causing silence in the class. All the students and the teacher looked at him in bewilderment. The woman told him to watch his language and said that if he had any questions, he could ask them. The guy smiled awkwardly and apologized for interrupting the lesson. He was just a little confused. Then he sat down in his seat with a groan and realized that all this was not a hallucination. After he skimmed through the pages of the textbook, he remembered literally everything. And even pictures. He can't quite figure out what's happening to him, but he definitely has to use it to complete the entire course. Great power comes with great responsibility. After a while the bell rang. He turned to his friends and said that he would not be at the last classes, so he asked them to make up for it somehow. Already running out of the university, he wondered how he could use the power that he had so easily received. After some time, he found himself in an alley and decided to put his power into practice. Lin Yang saw that there was a job for handyman number 1 carrying bags. He saw workers carrying boxes and asked if their boss was there, because he also wanted to try to work. A man in a cap came down the stairs and asked him if he was a student at a medical university. And if this is indeed the case, then he advises him to immediately change his mind, because many students came to him, but none of them worked for even a week. Lin allegedly showed his strength and said that there would be no problems for him, because he himself grew up in a village and knows what real work is, so he will definitely do better than the students who came to him before. The man reluctantly agreed and replied that he could try, and he asked a certain Xiao who to give him some work. Xiao who called the brat and showed him a carriage with bags containing rice. They need to be taken to the warehouse, but he has to be extremely careful, because no one here is going to pay for his injuries. Taking one bag, Lin Yang realized that it was as light as a feather. Therefore, he can carry much more than one bag at a time. So the guy decided to put a whole bunch of bags on his hands, and when the other workers saw this, they were simply shocked. They didn't understand how this was possible, because one bag weighs as much as 200 kilograms. This guy carries bags as if they were all empty. Meanwhile, Lin Yang concentrated all his strength in his hand and then threw the shot glass. This job was incredibly easy for him, which made the other men a little jealous. They admired the strength of the new guy. Lin Yang calculated that one pass is 20 seconds. Therefore, he can carry all the bags in 5 minutes. 1 hour later, the boss and Xiao, who were simply dumbfounded and incredibly surprised that the guy carried 700 bags of 200 kilograms in just 1 hour. Xiao, who told his boss that he was even a little afraid of this guy. He replied that there was no need to be afraid. As long as he works, he will receive payment, and he will do it now. The man handed Lin Yang his salary and said that one bag was 20 cents. He suffered 550 out of 700. How strong he is. Now Lin Yang can call him second brother. The man paid the guy $110 and told him to come back. Lin Yang happily replied that he would definitely come. Xiao, who walked up to the second brother and said that he would pay this guy himself. He replied that this guy is special, and one day he will be very useful to them. Meanwhile, Lin Yang went to the handyman's second job, delivering water bottles. The man with purple hair asked if he really wanted to do this, because he would have to climb stairs. Lin Yang grinned and asked who it was who said that he would rise. The guy then walked up to the apartment building and shouted to the owner of apartment 401 if he was ready. The poor resident could not understand what they wanted from him, but Lin Yang had already swung his hand and threw the bottle directly onto his balcony. The bottle landed right next to the man, who was still standing in shock. Both the boss and the residents were simply shocked. Lin Yang went to his third job, butcher. He came to Feng Yun restaurant and the boss asked him if he knew the specialty of this restaurant. This is a spicy pork chop. Thousands of customers come to them for their famous chop. An overweight man in the kitchen shouted, "Does it really take them 2 whole hours to butcher a simple pig? How many blanks can they make at that speed? They simply won't have anything to cook their dishes from." The man who met Lin Yang took him to this boss and said that this brat came to them for an interview. He wants to be a butcher. Lin Yang said hello, and the boss asked, does this little guy really want to work for them? Can he even lift the knife? The young man asked if they paid $2 for half a kilogram of meat, and as long as they pay him, he can cut up anything. The man threw a fat pig on the table and ordered it to be done right in front of him. And if he refuses, he can immediately fail in all 4 directions, because he has absolutely no time for all this. Lin Yang replied that he didn't have much time either, so he took the big knife in his hand and got to work. Other workers whispered behind his back, is he really going to work as a butcher with such a body? It looks like he was just fooled by the numbers in the ad. Meanwhile, the guy was able to cut the pig into 2 parts with one blow, which shocked everyone around him. Lin Yang noticed that he had slightly damaged the board he was cutting on, so he awkwardly apologized, and he promised that next time he would definitely restrain himself. The board turned out to be broken into 2 parts, and the guy asked if he could not pay for it. The cook stammered and replied that he might not pay. His eyes were the size of saucers from what he had just seen, and the young man continued to cut up the pig as if he had been born with such a skill. The man noticed that this guy definitely has talent. Several hours passed and Lin Yang returned home. He lay on his bed and was very pleased that he could so easily earn as much as $500 in one day. If he continues to work hard, he might even earn next year's tuition. A friend from the top tier lowered his head down and with a smile asked where he got the money from. Lin replied that he had a part-time job today and it turned out to be easier than he thought. The boy frowned and told Lin Yang to give up this whole thing. Their schedule is too busy and he simply does not have enough time to work. If he has problems with money, then they can lend him up to $2,000. The second friend grabbed the guy by the chin and said they had money. So how much does it cost him to spend a night with friends? Lin Yang threw his hand away and told him to stop talking nonsense. The same guy with glasses, the most silent one, told them that part-time work was not the answer. They're still studying, so why shouldn't he become a tutor? Some of their course earn $35 an hour this way. Lin assured his friends that he had no plans to quit his studies, he just wanted to earn some money. So why don't they all have fun tonight? The greatest of all friends folded his arms and said that this was exactly what he was talking about. He hopes that Lin Yang will not skimp at the last moment. He then hugged Lin Yang and they headed out of the room. It's time for them all to take a break from these nights of cramming. The guys went into some crowded place, a restaurant, and drank to relax. Lin Yang drained his glass in just a couple of sips, and his purple-haired friend looked towards another table. He noticed that there were quite a lot of people from their college in this place. Apparently, they are not the only ones who decided to take a break from their studies. Lin Yang turned towards the table his friend was talking about and saw that young Lila was sitting there. There was a very strong aura around her, and the guy could not understand why she aroused such strong emotions in him. For some reason he is very drawn to her. A friend asked the guy where he was staring. The red-haired one said that he needed to leave and promised to return in just a second. Lin Yang walked up to the table and the guys sitting there asked who he was. Lin Yang turned to the girl and asked if she remembered him. Young Lila thought for a few seconds, and then remembered the guy. The young man asked who she was sitting with and the girl replied that they were her classmates. They just decided to have something tasty to eat. Suddenly the village smelled a very tasty aroma, and she hugged Lin Yang tightly. He clearly didn't expect this. The girl suddenly noticed that this guy looked very handsome, and she can't stop hugging him. It was all very strange. Lin Yang, meanwhile, thought that this was all the tricks of his ring. The guy in the cap, one of Young Lila's classmates, loudly hit the table with his hand and asked the girl what she was doing. The girl came to her senses and retreated one step, apologizing for her very strange behavior. She herself doesn't understand what came over her. Lin Yang blushed a little and replied that everything was fine. At this time the guy jumped up from the table and asked who he was. Seeing that their friend was in trouble, the guys got up from their table and rushed to help Lin Yang, throwing their bottles. The blonde asked the guy in the cap if he really raised our brother's hand. Let him quickly disappear and not be seen again. Young Lila asked Feng Xiang what he was doing. He turned to her and indignantly remembered that she told him that she was still alone and did not have a guy in mind. So who is this guy then? The second guy also got up from the table and asked his friend Feng Xian to calm down. If he continues like this, then all his efforts will be useless. Feng Xian just snorted displeasedly and turned away. The second guy wanted to settle everything peacefully, because no one needs this aggression. Young Lila told Feng Xian that she really didn't have anyone before, but that was before. And at that moment, she glared at Lin Yang. She used to think that love at first sight was just a fantasy, but now she thinks completely differently. Feng Xian did not want to accept this reality. He asked in despair why she changed her mind so abruptly. He put so much effort into winning her, he even combed his hair, but in the end he still lost to some runt. Yang Lila calmly told him that she and he were just friends. Crowds of boys are already running after her, so what? She has to answer them all, right? Feng Xian didn't know what to answer, so he simply remained silent. The girl took advantage of his hesitation and apologized. He's a good guy. Feng Xian decided to take out all his aggression on the innocent guy and shouted that if because of him he doesn't kill this girl, then it will all be his fault. For such words, Lin Yang hit the guy quite hard. He fell onto the next table, splashing all the food in the visitors' faces. One man was very dissatisfied with this and, grabbing the guy by the head, he asked if he was really running into big trouble. Feng Xian began frantically apologizing for the mess he had caused. But the men were already up. They were sure that this guy definitely had no chance with that girl. And yet they had such a good chance. Feng Xian's entire face was already swollen and bruised. He kept begging for forgiveness. The man asked this freak if he really thought he could get away with just a sorry for his dirty face. He must look at the bottle before his eyes. Where does he think she will be in just a minute? Yang Lila could not stand this cruelty and ordered everyone to immediately stop this circus. This guy is still not a classmate, so they should let him go immediately. The man sarcastically asked the princess who she even was, and why should this be laid under it? Who does she even think she is? No one in this world dares to tell him, Ma Sanaru. Yang Lila said that hitting people is not right at all. Ma Sanaru dissipated and mimicked the poor girl. If it's not right, as she thinks, then he will just touch her very much. Lin Yang grabbed the man's hand, with which he touched Yang Lila's face, and said that it was also forbidden to touch people. Ma Sanaru couldn't understand what kind of force was holding his hand because he couldn't move it. He asked the red-haired man who he was and let him go immediately. Lin Yang said that he would let him go if he promised to end this mess. Ma Sanaru took a sharp dagger from his trouser pocket and pointed it at the guy. Is he looking for death? Yang Lila shouted at the guy to be careful, but Lin Yang had little difficulty dodging the man's attacks. The man just cut his jacket. Lin Yang told him that he should pay for his clothes. The gang of men had a very bad attitude against the guy, so he grabbed Yang Lila's hand and dragged her along with him. He ordered her to stand behind him so that she would not be hurt in any way by the fight, and he himself effortlessly fought back at the attackers. A friend with purple hair shouted to him that another opponent was right behind him. Ma Sanaru hit the guy on the head with a bottle, and it broke into small pieces, but the young man simply hit back and seemed to feel nothing. The friends were amazed by Lin Yang's strength and realized that helping him, judging by hanging, was unnecessary. Meanwhile, Lin Yang himself reminded the man that the raven owed him money for the torn jacket. Ma Sanaru stood up and said that his pants were not empty. The guy pulled the man's wallet, took out $400 and told him to leave immediately. The crippled Gopniks hobbled in the opposite direction, and the guy's friends praised him for his wonderful show. It was simply amazing. They didn't think he could fight so well. When will he share his technique with them? Lin Yang laughed and replied that he would never. He then sat down in front of Feng Xian, handed him the money and told him to go to the doctor because the booklet would be bad if he left it like that. Feng suddenly apologized and thanked Lin Yang for his help. Yang Lila said that she simply couldn't believe that Lin Yang was studying martial arts. The guy modestly replied that these were just the basics. But why don't they have a snack together? The friends understood his hint and immediately came up with a bunch of excuses why they urgently needed to go home. They wished the guy good luck and left. The girl who was sitting at Yang Lila's table then hurried away to leave them alone. And so the two were left completely alone, which made them terribly embarrassed. For some time they were simply silent, not knowing how to start a conversation. The guy felt awkward just standing there opposite her. He urgently needs to come up with a topic for conversation. But what will happen then? Should he take her hand? Or is he going too fast? But is this better than doing nothing? The girl herself solved the problem. She simply took his hand and offered to take a walk. A little later they found themselves in the park. The girl admitted that she was very embarrassed and didn't even know why she fell in love with him so suddenly. The guy replied that he really liked her too. Doesn't she see what's going on? Yang Lila suddenly asked, does he want to become her boyfriend? And then she kissed him on the lips. The guy certainly didn't expect this. Everything is happening too fast. And what is this pink smoke around them? Is it really the ring that does all this? When Yang Lila pulled away, she felt something strange again. When she is with him, she feels so warm. He is just like a star in her emptiness. Lin Yang grabbed her by the shoulders and said that it was too late. So he walks her to the dorm. The girl paused for a second and realized that she had just kissed for the first time. Why did she do this? What is going on? Is this really a dream? What is she doing? As she clutched her face, Lin Yang asked if she was okay. For unknown reasons, young Lila cannot control himself when she is around him, so it is better for him to stay away from her. Lin Yang agreed to walk behind her quite easily. After some time, the guy returned to his dorm. Friends immediately began asking him how it all went, and whether he had missed such a good opportunity. Is he now young Lila's boyfriend or what? Lin Yang indignantly replied that he was a gentleman and would not behave like that. He's also very sleepy, so they better get out of his bed as quickly as possible. The blonde told the gentleman that he showed off so much today that he really surprised his bros. Why doesn't he then teach them a technique, or maybe even two? Of course, he doesn't need to teach them all his skills. It will be enough that they cannot be invincible in the entire hostel. And then Lin Yang admitted that he had lied to them about the fact that he was studying martial arts. The purple-haired man got angry. Is he still playing the fool? Those blows were much more honest than himself. The guy grabbed him and then Lin Yang shrank and promised that he would still teach them the techniques. Just let him go. He immediately let go and replied that this was the right decision. The guy with glasses asked where they would start. Maybe with the white bone claw technique. The blonde asked what kind of girlish technique this was. Why should they teach her? Just to scratch your back. Lin Yang thought that he had nothing to teach his friends, but it was not that important. He can simply tell them something, and he will think about the consequences later. Lin said that he had assessed their bodies and they would be able to learn martial arts. But he doesn't have time for all this now, so he will teach them in a month. The guys readily responded that they would wait until they had a chance to study before graduation. The guys galloped off and Lin Yang just rolled his eyes tiredly. The next day, Lin Yang again came to work, where he had to carry bags, and did the same thing as before. He finished it all quite quickly and the man, one of the workers, calculated that the guy had carried as many as 1,500 bags of rice in just 1 hour. How strong is he? Then the young man returned to his second job, where he had to carry large bottles of water. The boss told him that he was the strongest person he knew, and he can definitely find a better job than delivering water. Maybe he wants to become a security guard. Payment is more than 10,000 a month. Lin Yang replied, the table is just an ordinary student, so he doesn't think that he will be hired to work as a security guard. In his head he figured that at this rate he could earn 10,000 without working as a security guard. On the third job, the young man cut up pork very quickly and the chef was very pleased with him. He was convinced that in every case there would always be an experienced and talented specialist. The man reminded the guy not to forget to pick up his payment. When the guy finished with all his work, he slowly walked down the street. Another day of good earnings. He can even set aside one part to pay for tuition, and the rest. His friends have always taken very good care of him, so he needs to take them all to karaoke. After some time, all four stood in front of the karaoke bar. The blonde noted that this place was too expensive for him, so he doesn't think it's a good idea. The guy with glasses agreed and reminded the guy that he works all day long and it's not Alden's place to take them to such expensive places. Maybe they're the ones taking him out. Lin Yang asked, have they forgotten how much he earned? They should just relax and have fun. Don't think about anything else. The friend had almost forgotten that he was a kung fu master. He's insanely rich. The guys headed to karaoke to spend as much money as they could. Suddenly they were pushed aside by a man in a suit. The blonde was very dissatisfied with this, and so the man turned around and barked that even a dog knows that the owner must give way. This place is too expensive for dogs like them. Lin Yang was a little taken aback by such words addressed to them. Meanwhile, the blonde was very angry and was ready to attack the man with his fists, but the guy with glasses stopped him. They're new here and don't know the area at all, so they certainly don't want any trouble. A man in a suit approached them, accompanied by 2 guards. He asked what happened and then the man in the suit explained to him that there was just a little trouble. And then he called this same Mr. Wang to follow him inside. The blonde called them snobs and tutted in irritation. Lin Yang advised him not to take this nonsense into his head. After all, they came here to have fun. They will only be passionate about karaoke. A little later, they already rented one room and immediately began arguing about the choice of song. Lin Yang watched his friends with a smile until the local phone rang. Who could it be? The guy picked up the phone and on the other end they asked if they needed anything. Meanwhile, in another booth, Mr. Wang told his subordinates to call a certain girl and tell her to come. While Lin Yang was talking on the phone, the guys were trying to guess who was calling him. Was this the girl who called him first? As always, the smartest of them said that what he grew up depends on what he says. Lin Yang just rolled his eyes at their chatter and returned to the conversation. He asked the girl for the number, but he couldn't meet today because he was very busy, so they can another time. Pretending that he had written everything down, the guy hung up. Friends immediately asked why he needed her number. Does he want to sign a long-term contract? The guy replied dissatisfiedly that he was not like them. He just thought that she would continue to call and start pestering him, so he lied. The guy with purple hair noticed that he only knows how to waste great chances to meet girls. But in any case, first they must drink and then sing. After all, this is why they came here. An hour later they were barely alive. Lin Yang slid down the seat. Lying in a daze, the blonde sang some kind of song. Lin suddenly woke up and realized that he urgently needed to get rid of the excess because he had too much alcohol. He left the room and immediately ran into a girl who had an excellent figure. She ran down the corridor and a very bright light emanated from her. Where did she even come from? Two men ran after the girl. Apparently, she was running away from them. Is she in danger? She urgently needs to be caught up and saved. Therefore, Lin Yang instantly sobered up and ran in the direction where everyone else ran. A little later he hid behind the wall, because apparently everyone had stopped. The girl hid in the office of the women's toilet, but this did not stop the men, and they began to knock down the doors of this very cubicle. It turned out to be much stronger than they could have imagined. The guards behind the man who was knocking down the door asked what he was doing. Apparently, they were not with him and they really did not like the behavior of this man. The bespectacled blonde turned and called them worthless guards. They shouldn't be involved in other people's business if they don't want to die. The guards immediately started fawning over Mr. Liu that he was so handsome with those glasses. They didn't even recognize him at first. They had no idea that he liked to knock down doors in women's restrooms, so they left immediately. Mr. Liu continued to knock down the door. She definitely won't run away from him today. The girl who hid inside was begging only for help. She was shaking like a leaf. Couldn't anyone save her? Mr. Liu didn't understand what the hell was going on. Why is this door so strong? How can she stand too for long? Suddenly there was silence, and the girl thought that her pursuer had left her behind and simply walked away. But the next moment his hand broke through the door and reached out to the girl straight through a huge ragged hole in the tree. Then the door opened and Lin Yang appeared in the doorway. He said that she had nothing to fear anymore, because her pursuer was already resting and the result could come out. The girl ran towards the showers and stood under the flow of water. Lin didn't understand why she was washing her face. Is she that shocked? The girl seemed delirious. It seemed to her that her whole body was simply on fire. It suddenly dawned on Lin Yang that she seemed to be drunk. The girl did not answer anything and began to hug the guy who did not understand anything. What's going on here? Meanwhile, Mr. Wang lay in bed, covered only with a blanket, smoking a relaxed cigarette, thinking that he should try a couple more things. For one particular woman, simple tricks will not work. He froze the jar of Viagra and poured out a few pills with a grin. At this moment, his phone rang and it was Liu. Apparently, he reported that the girl had run away. The next morning, Lin Yang was lying in bed and it turned out that he was naked. He couldn't remember where his clothes were or why he was in an unfamiliar place. Was all this not a dream? Is he not a virgin anymore? Or did she just put him to sleep and leave? He doesn't remember anything. So he urgently must find this girl and find out everything from her. When he came to the kitchen, the same blonde whom he saved yesterday was standing and preparing delicious food. She turned her head toward the sound and noticed that he was already awake. Lin Yang became embarrassed and asked where all his clothes were. The girl is friendly that she already washed his clothes and bought new ones this morning. And that's why I asked to apply the new clothes. Did she want him to change clothes right there in front of her? The girl replied, stoicism has a lot of room and he can choose anything. She also said that he could change his clothes right in front of her, because she had already seen him anyway. The guy replied that he would rather do it in his room and left. A little later he returned, already dressed for midnight, and asked why she was looking at him so strangely. The girl was very interested in how old he was and what his name was. The guy introduced himself and said that he was already 18, and then asked counter questions. The girl said her name was Yun Rong and she was 23 years old, but he can just call her Rong. The girl suddenly said that when she is next to him, she wants to be even closer, and she has no idea why any of this is happening. The blonde even called him her favorite. The guy sat a little further away and decided to change the topic of conversation, so he asked who the people were who were chasing him yesterday. Rong replied that they were Wang Ziteng's men. They are the real bastards. She didn't think they would dare treat her like that. Lin Yang asked who Wang Ziteng was. It turned out that this is the CEO of the company. Da Yu and their parents know each other. 3 days ago, her company encountered some problems, so she decided to ask Wang Ziteng to lend her $5 million. Who would have thought that this bastard would take the chance to take her to a bar and get her drunk? If she had not resisted, she would have been in his hands long ago. But thank God Lin Yang arrived on time. She couldn't imagine an outcome better than this. The guy looked at the time and noticed that it was already 10:30 in the morning, and he had so much work to do. and he urgently needed to go. The girl was a little upset, but was in a strange state, as if in a fog. Not knowing what to do, the guy simply kissed her forehead. This shocked the girl, and the young man said that he was studying at a medical college. Therefore, she can visit him in her free time. The girl asked what his phone number was so they could save each other's contacts. After some time, the young man returned to his hostel, where curious friends were already waiting for him. They were still haunted by where he went yesterday and didn't even say goodbye to them. And he didn't even answer calls. Lin Yang said that none of this is important, and they don't have to know everything. Last night his aunt came to the German and said that his cousin was sick, so he had to go with him to the hospital. The guy with purple hair asked if he really thought they were that stupid. His house is very far from here, and where did he suddenly get a cousin? Lin Yang smiled awkwardly and said that having a distant friend is quite normal. Several hours passed and night fell on the street. He lay in bed and thought that a lot of things had happened to him lately. Lin Lala's feelings, Yun Run's affection for him and very strong abilities, all of this was somehow related to his ring. He clearly feels that his body is definitely becoming stronger. What's happening to him? What is the history of this ring? Why is it magical? Even if he stays up all night thinking about all this, he still won't be able to understand everything. Tomorrow he will need to try hard, and now it's time for him to sleep. The next day, Lin Yang walked into a computer shop and sat down at the computer. He doesn't know Wang Ziteng, but it seems to him that he has definitely heard this name somewhere before. He must be a very famous person. After looking up information on the internet, he found that Wang Ziteng was the general director of Tianyu Corporation. They also have several subsidiaries and have a net worth of $40 billion. Both Wang Ziteng's father and mother own tea restaurants, Alice Clothing Chain, Flower Cat TV Company, GG Electric Company, BAIWAN Company, and so on. Lin Yang realized that the internet is indeed very educational. It turned out that this Wang Ziteng was not such an ordinary person. And not only him, his family is also not simple and very rich. This man is a real criminal. At least 7 girls died because of him. Lin Yan became angry. What a bastard this guy is. Lin Yan decided to go ahead and look at the latest news. It turned out that Wang Ziteng would be interviewed at the front of Tianyu Tower. Since Rong is now his girlfriend, because he dared to drug her, the guy won't let him leave so easily. After some time, Lin Yan went to the store. He bought groceries, putting everything in the cart. Meanwhile, at Tianyu Corporation, Wang Ziteng walked as usual, accompanied by his 2 guards. He was on the red carpet, all dressed up and in a suit, so a girl with a microphone, an interviewer from the production team of entrepreneurs, approached him. So she would like to interview him. They contacted his secretary and arranged this interview. The young man replied that he had been preparing for this interview for several days and was therefore definitely ready. The girl replied that this situation was just right and suggested starting with Tianyu's finances. Lin Yan disguised himself as hidden as possible so that nothing else could be seen. Even on his legs, shoulders, and hips, the clothes were filled with fluff. Thus, no one will be able to notice it even by smell. It's time to begin. At this time, Wang Ziteng said that he founded Tianyu 6 years ago. They first focused on import, export, and retail. But with years of development, they have begun to provide services on multiple fronts in various industries, with a fixed capital of over $3 billion US. At that moment, Lin Yan jumped on him and hit him with all his might, so much so that everyone around him was truly shocked. The guards immediately rushed towards Mr. Wang to protect him, pushing away all the other people in their way. Wang Ziteng was lying on the ground bleeding. He definitely didn't expect this outcome. Lin Yang continued to kick the prone person. All of Mr. Wang's glasses shattered into small pieces. The girls screamed and screamed at what they saw. There was already urgent news on TV that today the owner of Tianyu was attacked by an unknown attacker. It caused multiple fractures on Wang Ziteng's face and legs. Mr. Wang was admitted to hospital for emergency treatment. Mr. Wang himself, all bandaged, was also watching TV from his hospital bed and, out of anger, threw his phone at the TV, which remained stuck in the screen. Subordinates nervously reported that this man had disguised himself very well, and therefore they had no idea who he was. He was so strong and fast that they simply could not catch up with him. Fans shouted that they were all just useless pieces of crap and no matter how, they must definitely find this bastard. He will make him beg for mercy. Run was also watching the program at this time and was very surprised. Who is this striker, and how dare he attack Van? Lin Yan finally took off all his clothes and felt unbearably hot. He sat in the bushes and tried to catch his breath. A friend with purple hair immediately ran up to him and asked if he had seen the news. Lin Yan didn't understand what this was all about. It turned out that Wang Ziteng was beaten, And how nice it was to watch the video recording of him being beaten. He definitely deserved it all. Lin Yang wondered if he knew about everything. The friend suddenly remembered that while Lin Yang was away, Yonglala looked for him several times, because she did not have his phone number. So his friend decided to call him himself, but he didn't answer his calls either. Lin realized that he was too busy today, so he turned off his phone. A friend handed him a piece of paper on which the girl's number was written down, which she herself gave to him. It was cool, so Lin Yang promised to call her back later and stood up to move a little further away. He immediately dialed her number and said that he heard that she was looking for him. The girl was happy that he called her and decided to invite him to the aquarium. The young man replied that he was completely free, so they agreed on tomorrow morning. Lin Yang was glad that he didn't have any plans tomorrow, and after saying that, they said goodbye. The girl lay down in her bed among the huge plush toys with relief and was glad that he did not refuse her offer. At this time, Mr. Wang in the hospital almost went crazy with anger. He was still angry that his people couldn't find the bastard who beat him up. From these screams and excessive mobility, his head ached very badly. One of his subordinates advised him to calm down because it might expose his wounds. Van threw something in his face and told him to close his mouth. The young man's father, who was sitting in a chair nearby, told him to calm down because there was absolutely no use in being angry. He has already sent people on reconnaissance and very soon they will have at least some clues. Van asked his father to give him this guy as soon as he was found because he really wanted to tear him into small pieces. The man replied that this could be arranged without any problems. He could do whatever he wanted with him. Lin Yang and his 3 friends were sitting in their dorm room, eating at a low table. One of his friends decided to rat him out and told everyone else that tomorrow he would have a date with a beautiful lady. The blonde immediately almost fell out of reality. What a news. The purple-haired man looked as if he knew all the secrets of humanity and said that Yashin Yan was going to date their university beauty Lin Lala, who was studying at the music department. And tomorrow they are going on a date. The brunette with glasses was less emotional and, putting food on his plate, only praised the guy. However, he also made sure to remind him of the techniques they were promised to teach. Lin Yang didn't know what to answer, so he decided to act according to the situation and replied that such matters require talent. The door to the room suddenly opened and all 4 turned towards the noise. The guys were not in a happy mood and immediately broke into the room after Lin Yang. Purple stood up and asked who they were to break in here. He has never seen them at this university. Do they want a fight? One of the 3 guys who came approached Lin Yang, guessing that he was the one for whose soul they came. The second guy, blonde, with a bandaged nose, confirmed that it was really him. Lin Yang said that he is the one from whom they will receive a hat today. The first of the 3 bandits called Lin a brat because he hurt his brother and dares to act so arrogant in front of him. The brunette with glasses warned his friend that the enemy had a knife and he must be careful. The guy with the knife was sure that this red-haired guy would probably die a very painful death. But it was not there. Lin Yang was able to easily push his hand away, thereby knocking out the knife. And then he hit his opponent directly in the solar plexus with his knee. The 2 ancient bandits looked at this with their mouths wide open. Lin Yang picked up a knife from the floor and turned to them, asking if they also wanted to die. Will they end up fighting him or will they just leave? Of course, those 2 were terribly afraid of the fate of their predecessor, and therefore began to babble that they were just joking. And it would not be bad to resolve everything peacefully. Lin Yang told them to drag their wounded friend out of here. If one of them wants to fight with him, then they can simply look at him lying down and think about further consequences. They raised their hands and said that they would not fight him and would never contact him again. Therefore, they took the injured friend and left the room. Lin Dahai, with his nose bandaged, the most important of them, was listening when Lin Yan addressed him. Lin said that if he comes to him again, he promises that he will break his nose again. Lin Dahai immediately shouted that he fully admitted his guilt and began to beg to let him go. The main thing is that they don't break his nose anymore and then he won't mess with him anymore. The blonde even fell to his knees to make it look more believable, and Lin Yan didn't want to stay with this bastard any longer than he should, so he sent him away. Lin Dahai thanked him for forgiving him and informed him that he would leave immediately. The door slammed shut. The guys certainly knew he was strong, but they didn't expect him to be so amazing. How incredibly strong he is. Lin Yan turned his head towards them and said that those bastards were just some scum from the street. The next day, Yonglala and Lin Yan came to the aquarium. The girl ran from one aquarium to another, looking with her huge eyes at the wonderful fish. She held the guy's hands and could not contain her joy. Some of the fish looked very strange, and the guy suddenly said that they usually taste better if you salt them. The girl didn't like it very much. They were on a date, so he shouldn't be doing grocery shopping here. Lin Yang said that behind this aquarium there is a seafood restaurant. Therefore, it most likely makes sense to choose these seafood here and cook there. The girl did not answer anything and looked at him with a very strange, dissatisfied look. Lin Yang thought that this was all very boring. Fish is no good if they can't eat it. Suddenly the young man noticed that a man was standing not far from them, and he behaved very strangely, holding his hand. It seems that something happened to him, but his left hand was bleeding. Most likely he was in trouble. Lin Yang turned to Yang Lala and said that he should go away for a while to buy something to eat, and he would return very soon. The girl told him to hurry up and continued to look at the fish. In fact, the guy urgently needed to find out what happened to that man. Meanwhile, he had already reached the toilet and fell to the floor, bleeding. A man in a suit with dragon tattoos stood above him, and Lin Yang noticed that he was emanating a strange black aura that surrounded his entire body. The black aura seems creepy and the guy feels that this man definitely once killed a person. When this guy passed by Lin Yang, he was hit with a wild cold. The blonde man in the suit began to pull the handle of the door behind which the wounded man had locked himself. He started yelling at him to stop immediately, and Lin realized that he was a foreigner. It sounded quite familiar, but he couldn't remember what language it was. In the end, the handle of the lock was torn out and the man broke into the booth, where there was already blood all over the floor. The man was surprised that his victim was still alive, and in the next moment, he decided to throw a bunch of knives at that man, and Lin Yang realized that he was going to finish off the poor fellow. Therefore, the guy simply took and caught the knives with just his fingers, without fear of getting hurt. It was a real throwing of knives, but Lin Yang did an excellent job. He was even surprised that he could catch all these knives so easily. It's incredible that he is so fast. The youth then asked the man if he thought it was too far to kill him, and then Lin Yang knocked him out with one blow. Why did this man annoy him so much that he wants to kill him? The wounded man thanked the guy for saving him, and it turned out that he could speak his language. Lin Yang asked why the man wanted to kill him, and the man told him that they could not stay in this place for so long, so he called him with him. Lin Yang was embarrassed to say this, but he came with a girl, and she must already be waiting for him. The man replied that he could take his girlfriend with him because he lived very close here, at the Jinbai Hotel. Lin Yang was a little taken aback by this information because this is a very expensive hotel. Apparently this man is very rich. A little later they came to the same Jinbai Hotel. The man led them to his room, but Yang Lala still didn't understand anything. Why did they come to this place so suddenly? After all, those 2 tickets that she paid for admission were worth her money, and they will soon expire. The man replied that the guy was his old friend and he just wanted to invite him and her to his house when he saw the guy. He also has some tickets to this aquarium, and he can give them to them a little later so they can come there at any time. The girl smiled and replied that she would definitely use these tickets. 2 girls stood in front of the doors, and the man said that they should come here. The guy noticed that they had a rather strange glow, and it was clearly different from Yang Lala or wrong. He must definitely find out what the matter is. One girl brought him a glass of water, and Lin Yang noticed that they looked like foreigners. He needs to get them somehow. Suddenly, Yang Lala grabbed his sleeve painfully and asked him with a sad face not to look at these girls. The girls stood behind the man, and he replied that his name was Kato Yuan, and these girls served the young master, sisters Ozawa Ran and Ozawa Shiu. Lin Yang was surprised when he heard the surname Kato. Is he really good at using his fingers? The man didn't even understand what he meant at first, and then the guy felt awkward, and he hushed up the topic. He said that he was a student at a nearby university. Lin Yang then asked what ultimately happened at the aquarium. The man only replied that it was a long story, and he asked if the guy knew what a 6 consortium was. Lin Yang replied that he had never heard of it. How can he even know about a foreign consortium? Then the man replied that he was the butler of the first consortium of the family house of the Matsui master. A week ago, their master came to visit Hayashu, but the master could not stop him. So he came to China with him, his sister Ozawa and other bodyguards. But an unexpected surprise awaited them. The master died of illness on the 2nd day after they arrived. At the same time, the hitman was waiting for them. And now 30 guards have been killed. The guy thought it was quite interesting. Will he be able to defeat the enemy of the first consortium? The girl sitting next to her didn't understand a word. She felt like she was in some strange movie. Suddenly Kato fell to his knees in front of the guy, which shocked both the guy and the girl. The man replied that China is a very big country with many wonders. The master once told Katano that there are many people in the world with strange powers, and Mr. Lin must be one of them. After these words, the man bowed and asked him to protect his young master. He even begs. Lin Yang was truly discouraged. He didn't know how to behave or what to answer. Why is Katano crying so much and kneeling in front of him? He's a man. Therefore, I must get up quickly. Katano said that he must protect him for 7 days and a certain lady will help him. Then they will have more people to take the young master back. When things get better, Matsui will thank him well. Let the guy help. The 2 meters who stood behind also begged Lin Chen to help the man. Young Lolo whispered in the guy's ear that they definitely need to help, since they are all so pitifully asking. The young man thinks, thanks to the large consortium, it will be very good if everything goes smoothly. But if they do lose, it will be terrible. However, he still has a reason why he must help them. He had to get the Ozawa sisters, or he would regret it for the rest of his life. Lin Yang decided to help, so he ordered everyone to get up from their knees and asked where this young master of theirs was. A sleepy guy with long blonde hair came out from next door. He squinted his eyes from the bright light, stood in his pajamas and didn't understand what was happening. Lin Yang didn't think that this was the young master. He looks like a young girl. Kitano said something to him in another language and the young master suddenly became happy about something. The man introduced the master as Daeon Mitsui's and he was very impressed with how they met. Apparently, the young master admires Mr. Lin. The guy awkwardly thanked them because he didn't know what else to answer. This whole situation was generally very strange. The man said that if possible, they would like to stay with them because this hotel is very easy to find. The guy replied that he lives in a hostel, and unfortunately, it is impossible to stay there. But he knows one place where it can be done. After some time, they came to Run's house. The girl met them and, apparently, knew about the arrival of his friends. Seeing a crowd of people, she asked them to enter the house. When Kitano and the young master sat down on the sofa, Run offered them something to drink. Lin Yang and Yanglada were sitting on another sofa, and the girl asked him in a whisper why he knew this girl. And with such a great figure, who is she really? She doesn't think at all that they are just friends, as he himself told her. Lin Yang began to get nervous and asked to talk about it a little later, because now they have to help someone. The girl was almost crying. She knows that they have only been dating for a few days and she has no business interfering with his past. But she thought that she was his only one. The guy asked her to stop and promised that he would tell her everything tonight, and she can ask him anything. The girl sniffled and agreed dejectedly. At this time, Rong approached them and told the guy that his friends were not very simple. Lin Yan asked if she needed more money for her company. The girl responded positively, but also added that she was already finding other options for receiving them. Lin Yan walked up to Kitano and asked if he heard it. The fact is that this is his sister's house and she must pay rent. The man bowed and thanked her for allowing them to stay with her. They will only stay here for a week and, of course, pay the rent. $10 million a day. Both girls were shocked by such a sum. It was simply incredible money. Lin Yang remained quite calm and replied that this would be quite enough, but if he had the money right with him, then Kitano could start paying right now. Now Rong Yun really needs money, and he hopes that he can help her in at least this way. Kitano replied that Mr. Lin was right, and he asked for a bank account number where he could transfer money right now. Lin asked Rong for the account number, but the girl replied that she could not simply take such a huge amount of money. The man protested and said he didn't think that was even enough. Therefore, she should not refuse. Rong thanked the guy, but he replied that she shouldn't do that. Suddenly the guy remembered that it was time for his work. He completely forgot about time. Therefore, he informed everyone that he needed to leave and the young master could come with him. He had to protect him after all. Kitano said it was very dangerous to take him outside with you. But Lin replied that he had one idea. However, there was a very bad feeling. After a while, the sisters dressed the young master just like a girl and laughed a little. The young master did not like this at all and he stood gloomy and angry. After a while, Yun Rong was able to find her children's clothes, which could be suitable for the young master. Lin Yan also praised the sisters for doing a great job on his transformation. The young master answered awkwardly in another language so that they would not think he was a girl. He started pulling the skirt in different directions and the sisters told him that it might tear, and he shouldn't do that again. Shouting over all the fuss, Lin Yan told the young master that someone wanted to kill him, and if they succeed, then his family will immediately lose everything. Does he really want this to happen? Kitano began to translate everything that Lin said to the young man, and he dejectedly submitted and stopped being hysterical. He said that the young master is steam and that he is generally amazing. Lin Yan thought that ordinary children would cry for days, but he just easily accepted everything that happened and it is admirable. Kitano said that the young master also asks that he keep all this a secret because it is very embarrassing for him. Lin Yan promised that he would not tell anyone anything and there would definitely be no problems with this. The young master communicates with Lin Yan as if he were his elder brother, which is quite a rare occurrence. The conversation was interrupted by Rong Yun, who informed everyone that she was going to take Yang Lila to the university. Lin Yan only thanked her for this. Then he grabbed the young master and took him to his work so that he could show him many things there. When they arrived at their first job, Lin Yang, as usual, was carrying a bunch of bags at a time, and the young master sat quietly on the side and watched this. He really had a lot of admiration for Master Lai and his strength. The same thing happened at the other 2 jobs. It was absolutely amazing. Lin Yang was truly flattered. But he still didn't understand the language, so he could only guess that the boy was giving him a compliment. To protect him, Lin Yang needs to stay in the apartment, then he needs to bring some essentials from the dormitory to the apartment. A little later, Lin Yang came to his dormitory. The young master was with him. The guys opened the door and saw the child. Did he and Young Lila already have children? They only recently started dating. It was kind of a joke. But Lin Yang was not amused. It seemed to him that his friends had really gone crazy. A brunette with glasses stroked the girl on the head and promised that they would help her smile more often. The guys started pestering the girl with questions about her name and so on, and were sure that she would definitely grow up to be a beauty. The young master had no choice but to simply endure such an attitude, and that's all. In the meantime, Lin Yang collected his things and told the guys that for the next few days he would be living in another place, and they should cover for him if anyone suddenly asked about him. A lonely friend asked why he was leaving. Did something really happen? Lin Yang came up with a story that this was his younger cousin. His aunt and uncle, the girl's parents, had just divorced, and most likely it was very difficult for the child to go through all this psychologically, so he would stay with her for a few days. The guys immediately rushed to sympathize with her, how poor and unhappy she was, and even cried. Lemmy, the one with the glasses, was even going to kiss her on the cheek to console her a little, and that's what happened. The boy just had to come to terms with it. Ling Liu called Lin Yan's phone, and without much greeting, she told him to come to the cafe in an hour because they needed to talk very seriously. Because Yun Rong told her everything. Lin Yan was very nervous. Did she really tell her everything? Exactly an hour later, Lin Liu, Lin Yang and the young master were sitting in the cafe. The situation was quite tense and the girl said that she wanted to talk to him alone. But Lin Yan assured her that his sister did not speak their language. The girl jumped up from her seat and asked why he didn't tell her anything. Lin replied that there is a reason. It's not so easy to say. How could he even say something like that? That he slept with another girl when they first started dating. The girl asked if he was forced, and this completely led the guy into a dead end. Lil said that Rong Yun told her absolutely everything. She was drugged that night, so she couldn't hold back and forced him to do it. And he managed to refuse because he immediately thought about her. In fact, it was that when Yun Rong started pestering him in her drunken delirium, he told her to stop because he had a girlfriend. And she can't have his heart even if she gets his body. The guy wondered if he was really that calm at that moment. But as he remembers, he really liked it. Lil added that he even whispered her name when he slept. So he shouldn't blame himself for this and he can actually talk to her about anything. Because they should be open with each other. Lin Yan was even a little moved by how wonderful his girlfriend was. Rong Yun also said that they can be together and she will not interfere with them. Lin Yan hugged the girl and replied that it was very great that she could understand him. And in general, he loves her. The next moment, Lin Yan kissed Lil on the lips, and she responded with the same ardor. After a while, Lin came to Rong Yun's house. He thought about the fact that although everything that happened was not a problem for Lil, what would happen if she really left him? Rong opened the door and asked where he was going in such a hurry, since he was knocking on the door so furiously. Then the guy suddenly grabbed her hand and pulled her to him. He asked what she meant when she told Lil all this. Is she really breaking up with him? The girl hugged him and said that of course she would not break up. If she hadn't told Lin Liu all this, then most likely she would have simply killed the guy. Lin Yan said that this is why he loves her very much and was about to kiss her. But they were interrupted by the young master. It was very inappropriate to do this in front of him, considering that he was next to Lil at first. The phone rang and the guy didn't even have time to answer before Rong rushed to answer the incoming call. For now, Lin Yan told the boy to go and find his grandfather. But he stood still, staring at the guy with all his eyes. When he left, Lin Yan told Rong Yun that there were no children and they could finally do what they wanted. On the phone at this time, Rong was told how someone missed her very much. Lin Yang realized that it was Wang Ziteng. How can he call her again? The girl started shouting into the phone that last time it would have been better to beat him to death. Lin Yan demanded her phone number and told that bastard himself to never call her again. Otherwise he would be in very big trouble. Rong whispered that Wang is a very influential person and there is no need to anger him. But the red-haired man didn't care. He wasn't afraid of anyone. Van still didn't understand who he was talking to now, and the guy introduced himself simply as me. Wang Ziteng demanded to know his identity, and then he would quickly help him come to hell. Wang Ziteng was very angry and promised whoever it was on the other end of the line that he was finished. He can't escape. He will kill him within the next 3 days. Yun Rong climbed in and began to ask Wang that Lin was reckless and stupid, and that it was better not to touch him at all and forget about him. Nobody needs extra problems, and if Van continues to behave like this, then she will never forgive him for this. Wang Zitang laughed and said that at least someone in the city dared to go against him, and he will change his name if that guy dies without suffering. Lin Yang listened to all these shouts and offered to argue what Wang Zitang was capable of. In his room, the patient jumped out of his chair in anger and broke his phone. He won't just put up with it. One of his subordinates came into his room and asked his boss why he was so angry. Wang Zitang ordered to take all of Yu's men to find Yun Rong and kill her boyfriend. Then he changed his mind that there was no need to kill the guy because he needed him alive. He will torture him thoroughly before he dies. The man advised him to rest, and he himself would bring this guy to him today. Rong Yun burst into tears from all the horror. Does he really want to die? Does he even know what kind of person this Wang Zitang is? He is going for the purest suicide. Whoever goes against this man will be quietly killed. The girl clung to him, crying bitterly. She didn't want to lose him just like that. Lin Yan hugged her tightly and said that everything would be fine. Rong didn't want to put up with this, so she pushed him in the chest and told him to leave, and never come back again. Wang Zitang is not the right person to challenge, therefore he must leave. Lin Yang was quite calm and tried to convey to the girl that he knew very well about the origin of that man, about his money and power, and that he did a lot of bad things. Well, so what? Doesn't she see that with all this, he also protects Mitsui's and also works 3 jobs at the same time, so for him all this is nothing. So she shouldn't worry so much. The guy also reminded her that just recently Wang Zitang was excused right in front of everyone. Rong Yun really hoped that it wasn't him, but it really was him. This Wang dared to drug her, and then Lin Yan decided to kick his ass. Let him go. At the end of the day, the guy wants to see what he can do. A little later, the guy remained on a wedge with himself and thought that the meeting would not be so simple. It will be necessary to simultaneously protect the young master and fight Wang Zitang. This is not something that can be solved with fists alone. But how good it is that he has a weapon that he took from the killer, then perhaps it will be useful to him now. Lin Yan decided to practice throwing swords at the wall, but he didn't succeed the first time. The sword should have remained stuck in the wall, but it simply bounced off and fell. Maybe some angle of his throw is more correct, so he will try again. So much until he really does something really cool, even if it takes thousands of tries.